We have everything. We have our quilt top, we have our batting, and we have our backing selected. Now let's talk about assembling your quilt sandwich. Have you ever wondered what kind of batting or backing to use to finish up your perfect quilt project? Hi, I'm Angelique and this is Maddie, and welcome back to Beginning Quilting with Maddie.
Hi everyone.
So in the last video, you finished piecing your quilt together.
Pretty exciting.
So now it's time to talk about what you want to put on the back of your quilt, what you want to put between the layers of your quilt so that we can get it all prepped and loaded on the frame.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're getting really close to the quilting.
Exciting.
So let's first talk about options for backing, okay?
Yeah.
So your first would be very traditional, just using the same kind of quilter's cotton that you used on the front.
Okay.
It comes in two standard sizes, 42 to 44, and your wide bolts, which are 108. And so this is just an example of traditional cotton. So
Yeah.
it's the same kind as the front and the back, just a slightly different pattern.
Yeah.
I used it for the binding as well. How your quilting is going to look is going to be very similar front and back.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Yeah, this is a decorative piece for my living room. So when I do wash it, it's going to shrink at the same rate. So that's actually one of the benefits. You don't have to worry about it shrinking differently. That of course is assuming that the quality is the same.
Right.
There are some differences in quality of cotton. So
And you mean that the back will shrink at the same
rate
as the quilt
exactly.
top? Okay.
Yeah. So then you don't have to worry as much about things pulling apart, because it's going to be that same thing. So that's one of the benefits of it. One of the other benefits too is the fact that it's so common.
Yeah.
Very easy to find.
Lots of options.
Lots of options, especially with patterns and colors and stuff like that. So you can never go wrong with that. Okay. The next one is a cotton type as well. It's called flannel. Flannel is, even though it's cotton, because it is different than your quilter's cotton, it does shrink at a different rate.
Okay.
So it is highly recommended that you pre-wash, but it can have that softness to it and cuddliness to it. The only reason I used flannel on this is I loved the pattern.
Yeah.
And it really just went with my quilt. So that was kind of my main reason for that. This is a flannel that's a mix of polyester and cotton.
Okay.
So you've got 100%. It does come in different things. If you feel it, you can kind of feel a little bit of oiliness to it. That's the polyester, because polyester is a synthetic that's made from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But this one here was literally a blanket type. I got at a now going defunct craft store. And this one came in a larger size, kind of in between, but you can get flannels in that standard size, that 42 to 44 bolt. Sometimes you can find it in the 108. This one was 70 or 75 because it was designed for blankets. Quality of this one was not as good as this one, I will tell you that. I have washed this one, and some of them will start to pea, where you get that little rough kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I still love it. It keeps me extra warm compared to some of my other quilts. It's my winter quilt now for on the couch.
It definitely looks cozy.
Yeah, it's definitely cozy. Usually when you have the larger bolts, you won't find as many options.
Yeah.
This is an example of fleece. Fleece is sort of your synthetic version of flannel. We all love that feeling of like a fleece lined jacket or something like this. And so you can kind of feel it. Soft and cozy as well. Mostly polyester, may have a little rayon in it. Sometimes you'll find things with the rayon in it. Rayon is a semi-synthetic in that it does come from a natural source. It could be bamboo, it could be eucalyptus, other trees like that, but then it's processed to kind of create the strands in a different way than you do with cotton, right?
Okay.
But it is, like I said, comes from a variety of different trees. I think birch is another one. So if you know somebody that has allergies to trees and you're making them a gift, you may not want to use something that has rayon in it because they may have an allergy to it. So that is kind of one of the problems with that. I don't have an example of just a regular polyester because it's not one that I tend to use, but polyester, which we mentioned, is a synthetic, is also what minky is made out of. And so some of the benefits of polyester, whether it's the minky or just like a regular back polyester, is that it's not going to shrink. So if you don't like that crinkly look in your quilts, then it's a good choice to use. It's going to be lighter.
Okay.
Compared to like a similar weight of cotton.
Yeah.
So if you're using it for a wall hanging and you're worried about making the quilt too heavy because it's a big one or something like that, then that's a good choice for that. Minky, on the other hand, is going to be a heavier version of that, so wouldn't necessarily use that as a wall hanging. But I love to quilt with minky because one, it's super soft. It will keep you warm, not as warm as the flannel,
right,
but it will keep you warm and surprisingly breathable because a lot of time polyesters are not as breathable as things. So if you like that feeling of fur, I also love how forgiving it is when you quilt with it. It's like your back quilting looks good even if your tension is off because you can't see it.
Yeah, the quilting looks super cute on this one.
Comes in a couple of different varieties and colors as well as sizes. Sizes are a little bit different. You have your standard, which is going to be around that 42 to 44. The large bolts are closer to 90.
Okay.
So it's a little harder to find like a 108. But most of the time you're going to find it in the smaller ones, especially with the different varieties and textures. As you can see, this one had more texture to it. It was like a longer nap.
Yeah.
So all these choices, what did you go with?
I went with minky.
Can we see it?
Yes,
all right.
Let's look at it.
So soft.
So soft. Yeah, I really liked the pattern on this one with the cute little speckles.
Great colors for your quilt,
yes,
too.
Beige.
But fun.
Yeah, really fun. And yeah, like you said, I like the idea of being able to actually cuddle up in the quilt, and this is just nice and soft and breathable. So I'm really excited about it.
All right. How do you know how much to cut? Good rule of thumb, we are going to be using a hoop frame.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of a good choice between the minky, so you don't overstretch that, and to not feel too overwhelmed by all of the pieces that are on a rolling frame. We'll get more into which one we picked for you, but just kind of, I wanted to give you that little bit of knowledge. So good rule of thumb when you're working with a hoop frame is that you're going to want about 8 inches around all of your sides. Okay, and your batting and backing can be very close to that compared to your quilt. Your quilt's going to be smaller than that. Couple reasons for that, especially with batting. When you're quilting, we talk about shrinkage, but in a different way. It's from the material getting pulled by the needle.
Okay.
So if you don't have extra on the sides, sometimes you can pull a little bit too much.
Yeah, and then your quilt top is
you're
bigger
cutting
than your
stuff
backing.
off, and then you don't get that even look that you want. With your quilt, that's especially important because we didn't put a border around it.
Right.
So we don't have any room for error in terms of that. When you have a border, you got a little wiggle room.
Right.
Because nobody knows what size you were going to make your border anyway.
Nobody needs to know what you had planned.
So sometimes, you know, and it can be difficult sometimes to find the right size.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a good rule of thumb. Depending on once you figure out what kind of backing that you want, then that's how you can determine how much to calculate.
Okay.
All right, so Maddie, your quilt came out to 60 by 72 inches. We did end up going with a larger minky. We were lucky to find one that you liked in the 90-inch width, so that made life easier, meaning we didn't have to piece anything together.
Yeah, that's super nice.
Yeah, sometimes we have a large quilt or backing that you like better, you're gonna do some piecing. So for this one, to calculate it, I took the longest side of yours, right, which was the 72, added that 16, so 8 for both sides, puts us at 88, gives us 2 inches extra. which
Okay.
is fine. More is better than less. And so all I really needed to then figure out was how much I needed for the length. So 60 inches again, add that 16.8 for both sides, gives us 76 inches that we need. A yard is 36 inches. So that came to just over 2 yards. I like to round evenly, if you will. So we went with 2 1/4 yards. So we
Right.
have a little bit of extra, which is fine. You can always make a pillow.
Yes.
So Maddie, you picked your backing.
Yep.
Now it's time to talk about batting. Now one of the
right.
reasons I wanted to talk about backing first is depending on what you choose may be part of your consideration for which batting that you choose, depending on like how many layers do you really want to quilt through. I know some people when they're using minky like you chose won't always put batting in between. I don't think that's a great idea, mainly because batting has some important purposes. Like backing, it can affect drape, right? And some of it's on how you want it to look when it's quilted. Do you want a really puffy quilt? Do you want to, if you're not, are you sure that you want the quilting to stand out more than your piecing? Do you want kind of a medium amount of that? It's also the layer that's really going to help add the warmth.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something to kind of think about as well as that breathability.
Okay.
Another thing I want to talk about is something that's called scrim. Scrim is what your fibrous material is actually held on by. And so you can see all the little holes. It's kind of like a weave. And then this is packed into that to give it more strength and stability.
I see.
So when you're machine quilting, you want something with a scrim.
Okay.
Without the scrim, you know, the force of what you're doing is going to cause pieces of your batting to come through your
Through
quilt.
the quilt. I see.
Yeah. Now, most of your 100% cottons are not going to have a scrim. You can find them, but they're quite a bit more expensive. This is a synthetic that doesn't have scrim.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wanted to show you how easily this starts to come apart.
Yeah.
Right? It is great, like your 100% cottons without scrim, even this synthetic here is great for hand quilting.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same pressure.
Right.
Right? I don't have an example of 100% cotton because I stopped using it. I switched to 80-20.
Okay.
So it's 80% cotton and 20% polyester. One of the benefits of this is it feels and it breathes like cotton, but it doesn't shrink to the same rate as cotton. So you're not gonna, you'll still get that crinkly look if you like that aged kind of look that happens when you wash with your cotton. It won't be as severe as 100% cotton, and it's just gonna shrink at a nice rate, not a super like, oh my God, what happened to all my batting?
Right.
So that's kind of nice. I have 2 examples here. I personally don't love products that are bleached. We have enough chemicals that we're already kind of living with and stuff like that. So you can see this is a bleached one. It's nice, bright and white. This is very useful if you're working on a project that has a lot of white in the back. Yours is kind of a beigey color thing.
Yeah.
I think it'll be okay. We didn't have a lot of pure whites.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too worried about that. But I know some people, like they don't want that to come through at all.
Right.
I like kind of that agey, warm,
nice.
yeah, that yellowy thing that kind of happens
Yeah.
with it. And more so than that kind of blue background that you tend to have with like a harsher white.
Right.
Right. So that's your 80-20. They do come in other blends. I've seen 70-30, not a big fan. I don't think they're as great quality,
Yeah.
having more of the polyester. But this is a nice kind of go-to. This is also considered somewhere between a low to medium loft. Loft is how thick and puffy it's going to be. You can kind of see that. We're probably about an 1/8 because this is about a 1/4, right?
Okay.
So you can kind of see that. Low to medium lofts are great when you want both your quilting and your piecing to stand out.
Okay, a good medium.
Yeah. So it's like if you're not sure, this is your go-to.
Yeah.
The next one that we have is bamboo. Bamboo is very similar to the 80-20. Bamboo is a fast-growing grass that's very woody, so it's more sustainable than cotton. So even though cotton is a natural one, the amount of water and stuff that it takes to produce it has a higher impact on the environment.
Right.
Bamboo grows like a weed.
Yeah.
So I know people, like when I lived in Hawaii, they would plant bamboo, and within like 6 months they had a forest.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean it does. It grows like a weed. It grows very quickly, and that's what makes it more sustainable.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So benefits very similar in terms of the loft and the kind of quilting you're going to get from it, but it is a wood.
Yeah.
And so now and again in the processing, I have caught myself with a splinter or something because it is a wood, and that may just be differences in quality of processing in bamboo. This is polyester.
Okay.
So this is a pretty high loft.
I keep feeling the need to feel all of them.
And that's fair. So you can see it's a good ½ inch or maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
This is going to give you that really puffy quilt.
Yeah.
Okay. You can see it's very airy in comparison, so it does create a lot of breathability. I love using this with baby quilts.
Okay.
And that might seem like counterintuitive because you're like, but you know, cotton is more gentle and stuff like that. I love the puffiness of it, so it makes a great surface for the babies to play on. So if you want to make that quilt where they're on the floor and it has that extra poof to it, a really lofty one like this, or a double loft like this, or I may sometimes layer this where I made one that had clouds and I really wanted the clouds to pop.
Cute.
So I'd like a regular one, and then I just kind of put these in places to make it puff.
That's darling.
Right? And I just, you know, gives it that cuddly, and babies need to be able to have air and breathe, so this might get too warm for them. Plus, a lot of times you'll put flannel on the back or something, so you're still able to give them that warmth, but most of the time, you know, they say not to cover babies when they're sleeping anyway, so really it's for the comfort of laying on something, not over them. So that's one of the reasons I like it. So if I really, again, want that puffiness to something, then this is my go-to.
Yeah.
I don't love the way it feels when it's not in the quilt. It's a little rough, but it's easy to tell the difference of the wrong side or the back side versus the right side. So now you have that decision to make. What kind of batting did you decide to go with?
Yeah, so I went with the 80-20.
Okay.
Honestly, what sold me, it's hard to mess up. If you're like me and you're new and you're like, I don't know if I want my quilting to stand out or my piecing to stand out. Why not both? So that just felt like a good choice. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, we have everything. We have our quilt top, we have our batting, and we have our backing selected. We've cut it based on the sizes that we just talked about. Now let's talk about assembling your quilt sandwich, which we have partially done. There's lots of different ways to choose to do your basting. Basting is a temporary measure for holding those layers together.
Got it, got it.
So if you talk about a basting stitch, it's a long sewing stitch you're gonna pull out. Okay. There's basting pins, or pin basting. You're just pinning the layers together to hold them together. A lot of times your frame can really hold these layers together for you really easily, especially if you have a rolling frame.
Yeah.
And the one we're using kind of does both, but we're not sure about our width yet if that's going to work, and we are still going to have to do some of that. Plus you're using Minky, and we're hooping. So I think the best choice for basting is to do spray basting.
Okay.
Now I have talked about pin basting and sew basting when it comes to using a hoop frame in the mini quilter video. So if you do want to know more about those, please check that out. But we're going to focus on the spray basting on this one.
Okay.
So spray basting, one of the reasons that I suggest that again is because you are putting it on the hoop, is we talked about how this can be a little stretchy.
Right.
So you can kind of see we've pre-done some of this. You are going to start by laying out your backing nice and flat on a surface. And I have some clips that I use on my table to help hold that for me, because I kind of have a smaller at home quilting space and I run into it and pull it. This helps to keep that down. Then you're going to lay your batting down. Now, we are going to also be using a leader cloth.
Yeah.
So I cheated a little bit up here. I didn't do quite a full 8 inches because we are going to be using a leader. That's going to make up the difference. But we have plenty here. So a good hand length for me is going to give us plenty for the shrinkage, okay?
Okay.
And so what you do is you start by spraying this and this, and then get that kind of stuck on there. And you do the whole thing for the batting onto the backing, and then you do the same thing with your quilt sandwich, and you do that by rolling them on. So we're gonna roll that out. Spray basting it's basically a water-based glue, which is gonna help hold it in place. It will peel back up if we need to fix it.
Okay.
Some cure time really helps as well, but it's just gonna help us maintain these layers for getting it to the frame.
Yes.
So we're gonna spray that down.
Do you need more over here?
Yeah, a little bit. And then we're gonna roll and smooth. All right, it's fast, it's easy. We're gonna let it cure because we did overspray. We didn't know exactly where we were, which is fine. So we're gonna let it cure, and while we're doing that, we can set up our frame.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, Maddie, your quilt sandwich is prepared. It's loaded.
It's loaded.
You are so close to getting to start quilting. Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Okay, so we need to start practicing. So in our next episode, Maddie and I are going to start practicing some free motion designs by drawing them out.
Cool.
In the meantime, if you'd like more information about some of the stuff we talked about today, I did find that brilliant blog that you wrote about batting. So you can find that on our website, graceframe.com, under resources and blog. If you have any other questions about what we covered today, or you want to show your beautiful work because you're sewing along with us, please put that in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time, and until then, please remember to sew with love and grace. Bye-bye.